Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Starr, and this is my channel, Not Bad Films. Today, I'm interviewing W.D. Kilpack III, who also goes by Bill. And this is part of a series of interviews that I hope to do with authors. What is the title of your book? And in 60 seconds, what is your elevator pitch?
Well, right now I have 4 books out, 3 of which are in the same series. It's called the New Blood Saga. And there's Crown Prince, there is Order of Light, and there is Demon Seed. And the 4th book is due out this month.
Oh, wow.
Over the-
Okay. So this is good timing then.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, this is great timing.
Perfect. And based on sort of the cover artwork there and titles, I'm guessing this is a fantasy genre.
Epic fantasy.
Okay.
And it's basically the story of Nathar, who's the guardian of Merrick. He has the ability to see into the future and can touch things that gives him glimpses of their history. And his goal is to protect the crown prince and so that he can regain the throne.
Got
And
it.
there's a lot more to it than that, but that's in a nutshell.
And the 4 books connect. They make a series, or saying, correct?
Yes, there's 8 books in the series, 3 that are out, 1 that's coming this month.
One of the things that I was thinking about and sort of developing questions for this is that books and novels, right? One of the things that they do, they have this great sort of honor of allowing us to paint our own image, a visual picture in our mind. So without sort of giving away any spoilers, or just mild spoilers if you want, is there a moment in your series of books that stands out to you or that you're just particularly fond of that creates one of those strong visual moments?
Well, one of the things that is a common comment about my writing is that it is very visual, that I am very descriptive, and so you feel like you are immersed in the world. That's my
Mhm.
goal, and that's the kind of feedback I've received. So hopefully, mission accomplished.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that inspired the series was a dream that I had. It was a recurring dream, and it's a character, in essence, being assassinated. And so the image with that, seeing this arrow coming from over a long distance, and it's pretty much a perfect shot.
Yeah, yeah.
And that image, every time I had that dream over months, I would wake up in tears.
Hmm.
And so when I started writing the series, I thought, I got into the first book and went, well, okay, that's not going to be enough to build the same kind of gravitas that I felt from my
Yeah,
dream.
yeah.
'Cause when you have a dream, it's all there. You know everything that
Yeah,
is
yeah. That's
happening.
that. Yeah.
And so then I thought it'd be 3 books, and then I thought it would be more, and then 6, and then it turned into 8.
Wow.
And that image actually takes place in book 4.
Oh,
But
the new book that's coming out.
yeah, and all the 3 are building up to that so that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can have that big moment. And
Yeah.
because that's another one of my goals, is that I want people to have a visceral response. I want them to get emotional.
Yeah.
Um, I read my books to my wife while I'm reading them, and we call them her bedtime stories. And she gets mad at me sometimes, and that something happens to a character, and she gets mad at me. And so, again, mission accomplished. That I
Yeah.
got that visceral response.
Yeah. That's what we hope for when writing, is to make people care about those characters enough to get mad at us, as we put the stories together. Out of all the tasks that are required to write a book or perhaps a series, what is that task that excites you the most and inspires you to sort of write every day, or whatever your pattern for writing is?
Well, the joy is absolutely the creation,
Yeah.
building a world that is fascinating and believable. And you would probably have to be uh, a pretty good scholar to know, but like the world in this series is based in Celtic culture. And then I have another series that I'm working on that its underlying foundation is Viking culture.
Wow.
And so building that world and coming up with uh, belief systems and developing cultures and all of that is just that's the joy of doing
Yeah.
it, and having characters that you feel very passionate about, having bad guys that you love to hate.
Yeah.
All of that, that's the joy, is having
Yeah.
that uh, that creation. I enjoy research, but because a lot of research goes into everything that I write, I
Yeah.
want it to be authentic.
Totally.
And so,
Do you find that, sorry, not to cut you off, but when you're let's say it's Celtic culture or it's Viking, do you go into this series or that you know um writing process like already fully educated about that, or is there like you have enough to get started but then you're researching as you go constantly and learning more, and and does that process ever set off light bulbs when you go like, oh, I never would have thought of this idea had I not done research?
yes, to all of that. Yes, to all
Yeah.
those. Um, I I'm familiar with Celtic culture because I've been studying it since I was a teenager,
Sure.
and my original love of all these things is mythology. And even when I was in elementary school, I read every mythology book that was in the school
Hmm.
library. And so I've been reading Celtic mythology and that sort of thing for years and years. However, doing research, I constantly find things uh, that are I didn't know.
Yeah.
In For example, the you've seen in movies probably where people are getting married and they're hand fasting. They
Yeah.
take the cord and tie their hands together. That's a Celtic thing.
Totally.
And so a lot of things like that, and finding um, for example, ways of execution or torture that were in place. Um, Surprisingly, there's some pretty brutal things
Yeah, we've
that the
been a
British were
horrible
doing.
species.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the British were still doing while we're having like the gold rush.
Yeah.
Some really horrible things to kill people.
Yeah, it's amazing how I think this comes up with Handmaid's Tale or Game of Thrones, obviously, is like, oh yeah, this horrible thing that happens, it's like actually that's based in reality. It
Yes,
always seems to be that's the darkest, element in some way. Yeah.
and those things, they do inspire me, either something like it, or maybe I'll just use something like that. If
Totally.
it
Yeah.
actually happened, then that fits in pretty well.
Yeah. So I have two sort of speed round questions. And this is something that I hope to sort of ask all the upcoming authors that I talk to, but what is a book or story that you dislike, and what is a book and story that you love?
um Dislike is if it's pretty much anything, if it's poorly edited.
Hmm.
um
Yeah.
I had a there was a book series. I won't name the author because I just don't think that's a very cool
Sure.
thing to do. But it was so I'd heard such great things, and two of them were out, so I bought them both. Then I'm reading the first one, and about halfway through, I just couldn't finish it
Yeah.
because it was just so poorly edited. And then I'm like, what do I do with these now? So they're still on my shelf. But as far as things that I really love, I mean, Homer's Odyssey, Homer's Iliad.
All right.
There's different
Really pulling way back.
that what every fantasy novel is based on that.
Yeah.
It's repackaged, and
Sometimes unknowingly too.
well, yeah, the influence is just pervasive. It's in
Yeah.
everything. So I love those. I've read both of those many times. Tolkien, I've read many
Yeah,
times.
sure.
Uh, George R. Martin with Game of Thrones. I All of these things are inspirational to me.
Yeah.
And a comment that I've received from several people is that my stuff is kind of a blend of Martin and Tolkien, and I take that as just a huge
Well,
compliment.
Yeah, that's a pretty pretty strong praise, I would say. And I'm going to guess that you also perhaps like Marvel comics and Star Wars.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you can see my shelf. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my first real goal for a job was I wanted to open my own comic book company.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to take down Marvel. I wanted to take down DC. That was my dream. And then in sixth grade, I had a teacher who taught my gift and talented class and my language arts class. And she, rather than having me do the regular writing assignments, she told me that in both classes to write a chapter of a novel.
Mm,
And so by the end, so when I was 12, I wrote my first novel.
yeah.
And over the course of that school year, it was a just a terrible ripoff of Tolkien, but still, I wrote a book and I developed
Yeah.
all these characters and and I will go through and rewrite those and stuff eventually.
Sure.
And uh, I've got quite a few in in the bullpen there,
Oh yeah.
waiting for their time.
For sure. For sure. Now, obviously we talked about some influences and sort of the visual nature of how you write. Um how did you develop that writer's voice? I mean, obviously you were talking about writing this novel as a kid. Is it through various exercises? Did you is it just the process of writing? Is it copying other authors?
Well, my first publication credit was when I was 9 years old for a poem.
Okay.
And my one of my teachers entered it into a contest without my knowledge, and it won and was published.
Great.
And so I've done I've been published a fair amount of times and won a fair number of contests with poetry.
Sure.
And I think that poetry is a huge influence because if you were writing a poem, then in a really short amount of time, you have to do sort of a snapshot
Yeah.
of an event or a snapshot of a feeling or some mental process. And
Yeah.
so that can be extremely visual. And then there is, well, and
And
just
very rhythmic too. I mean, right? I mean, there's I think at least for myself, the authors that am drawn to, their writing is very rhythmical or has some sort of sense of almost melody. And I
right.
think that poetry actually sort of helps to enforce that. Even, let's use the haiku as a standard thing that everyone knows because of the syllable structure. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you start thinking about how you're going to tell that story, thought, feeling, whatever it is, and you're sort of dealing with that sort of rhythmic component.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've written these 4 books. It says a series of 6 is in the end. Is that correct?
A series of 8.
Series of 8. Okay, so you haven't finished it, but I'm you're pretty far along into it. Um, what have you learned about sort of yourself, and or just maybe humanity in general through this process? Like, I imagine this has been a pretty big undertaking. There's probably been some takeaways that have changed your outlook on things.
One of the things that I hope that people get out of it
Yeah.
is that there are characters that endure a lot. They go through a
Mhm.
lot. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hardship. And um, one of the things that I hope that they get out of that is the value of endurance and
Mm.
that you can get through things. And this might sound like it's unrelated, but I wrestled for 12 years
Okay.
and I made the Pan Am team in Greco-Roman.
Yeah.
So I qualified to represent the United States. And it's the hardest sport there is.
Uh, I,
And
I I agree. I agree. I do jujitsu, so I
oh,
have some understand. Obviously, when wrestlers come to the dojo, those guys, they know what they're doing. You
yeah,
guys, wrestling is real. Yeah.
there's a lot of overlap
Yeah.
and with a lot of martial arts and wrestling.
Yeah.
And so that's the same sort of lesson that wrestling can teach you, and is that fighting through the pain. I've had so many injuries I can't even tell you. And so fighting through the pain, having the ability to look uh, adversity in the face and take it on. That sort of thing, that I'm hoping to have a similar sort of lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And, it through my books where people can see that. One reviewer of Demon Seed, one of along those lines, that I didn't really anticipate anybody getting real clearly, was about the learning the value of um, loyalty and love.
Yeah.
And so the element of loyalty was one of my things that I was trying to stress, but uh, the power of love itself, um, yes, it was part of it, but it wasn't something that I viewed as so central to the story. But
Mm-hmm.
having that reviewer say that, and I kind of sat back and said, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess you're right." And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of one of those things that I don't view myself as a romantic or anything like that, but I it's just
Well,
one of those
you
things.
read to your wife at bedtime. That's very nice.
Well, all right. And she's sitting next to me over here, and she just looked at me and gave me a cute little grin.
Well,
And
anyone who I'm trying to think of a good Star Wars joke, and I can't think of one fast enough. Um, all right, so next question. Next question. I gotta check my notes. Hold on. Okay, here's a big one. So so I've been writing and I'm in an editing phase, right? Um and this is a project I've personally worked on for a really long time, right? And and I thought, well, in talking to some other authors, um, published, um, what would you tell someone, or what would you say? What's the one thing you wish you had known before you'd started this project, um, in terms of whether it was scope, or just about the process, or about writing in general, or anything?
I've always been a writer, and so, or always been a storyteller.
Sure.
I Before I could write, I would draw the pictures, and
Hmm.
uh, having all these space battles and erasing parts of the ship as they got
Yeah,
exploded,
totally.
and so I've always been a storyteller. And so having the story flow, uh, for me, that's the easy part. um, this might sound, I'm not sure how this will sound, but I have
It'll
people
sound
all the
great, Bill.
time ask, what's that?
It'll sound great. Whatever you say.
I have people ask me how I deal with writer's block,
Sure. Yeah.
and I've never had it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that
No,
because I've never.
that's actually, it's funny you say that, because obviously this is an interview that's supposed to be about you, but like that's something I would say I relate to. Like, I've never personally had this problem of writing, and
Mhm,
maybe it's because you know you sort of alluded this earlier. Sometimes there's multiple stories you're working on at once, right?
mhm, right.
Um, but also I can just, for myself, and maybe you too, I'd be curious to know if I need to write, and I'm sort of need to write a specific story, but I'm going to sit down, I might just sort of free write for a moment, and I don't know what's going to come out, and that might just not be something separate, but it's just the ability to sort of just like jump into characters and start of moments and rhythm and explore thoughts and feelings, that for myself, writer's block has not been something I've necessarily experienced or thought about, other than when maybe you have to sit down and you're like, okay, I have to edit this chapter and look for grammar. And you're like, oh, there's something like
Editing
that.
is a different animal. That's
Yeah.
brutal.
And that's exactly, that's a different thing. It's maybe you've written a chapter and it was really easy to write, but now you got to go through and like polish it and then now it's like, oh, this is an emotionally draining chapter. Maybe it's sort of slow to work through the chapter, but yeah, I think that for some people, and that sounds like yourself, like you can just write, it just happens, it just flows, right?
Pretty much.
Do
I
you?
mean, now I have a laptop that if I'm going someplace, I bring it with me. I
Yeah,
always have it. But pre-computer, I had a three-ring binder full of lined paper that I carried with me everywhere
yeah.
in case if I had an idea. And
Hmm.
what's funny is going to high school reunions and having people bring that up.
Yeah,
And it's like, wow, that was, why would that be so significant to you that you're bringing this up to me 20,
yeah,
30, whatever, however many years later? But one thing, getting back to your question, one of the things that I did learn was that it was a process that usually I'd always been told write until you reach the end, just go.
yeah,
And one
yeah.
of the things I did with this series that was different was that I would write and say I wrote 20 pages. Then the next time I sat down, I would go back 10 pages
Oh
and
yeah,
revise and then go straight to the new stuff that was
yeah,
going from there.
yeah. That's actually a great call, right? Like sometimes you look at pages you've written and you
Mhm.
start sometimes it's really easy to edit those pages, and then it's like then you jump to where you're supposed to go. Like sometimes just getting those entry points to just sort of jump in, it's different
Right.
every day, I think, but yeah.
And it kind of primed me to get me back in the right page, but also it allowed me to kind of take a bunch of little editing steps along the way. Because
Yeah, yeah,
editing your own work is the hardest
it's
thing to
really
do.
hard. Now for this being 8 books, um even just one book alone is a huge undertaking. Did you work with an outline structure in advance, or did you sort of like have a sense like, all right, this is where I think we're headed, but I'm going to let my characters run, and I know they have to hit sort of some major points,
Mhm.
but like maybe you get stuck in a corner, you have to write yourself out a few times. Like, how did you structure this?
I don't outline my books,
Okay.
and what I do have milestones, just like you said, that I
Mhm.
have in mind that I have to hit these points. But how they get there, I like uh, to let it be more free.
Yeah.
There was an interview I saw with Quentin Tarantino, and he talked about how the characters tell him uh,
Right. Yeah.
how the story's going to go, and that is I'm not saying I'm a Tarantino, but that is as close to how I feel about it as anything I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That the characters tell me where it's going to go, how it's going to get there. And one of the greatest feelings for me as a writer is to sit back, and even though I'm the one writing it, I'll sit back and go, "Whoa, I didn't see that coming."
Yeah. Right.
And that's a great moment. That
Totally.
feeling that's almost as good as having people tell me they cried. That sounds horrible, but
No,
tell me they cried or they laughed out loud, or
yeah,
that's almost as good as that.
totally.
And but having those things that seemingly come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
People say, "So you talk to your characters?" And it's like, no, it's not like that. It's that they go and I follow and just I take notes.
Yeah. No, you're speaking my language 100% on that. Um, I don't mean to make this about me. I feel like I've done this over and over, but the anecdote, you mentioned crying. I was just out of college and I had a short film in a festival, and it was an animated film, and it was sort of like the big conclusion, the climax had happened, it's like the scene cuts and a little kid started crying, and I was like, I feel really bad, but like I guess that means that scene worked, like um anyway, so I know what you mean by that. Your books, and just for clarification, you're self-publishing, correct? Like through Amazon and Barnes and Noble, through Nook and stuff like that, like
Right.
e-publishing and so forth, right? Which is,
Mhm.
I think, amazing. Um, I think that's the wave of the future for writers. I think that's the, if you had good overall like sales and success with that model.
Critics have been amazing.
Yeah,
I haven't had a single negative review from a professional critic. Sales are not keeping up with the critics,
sure.
but it feels like it's on the cusp of something.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, right now, I've spoken to a lot of writers, and one has been making a living off of his books for 25 years. And he said that he has never seen nor heard of anything as bad as things are right now.
Sure. In the
Book
traditional
sales,
publishing
COVID,
world.
yeah,
Yeah,
COVID just had a huge, huge impact.
yeah,
And so, anybody that he was learning from coming up, he's never heard of anything this bad.
yeah, yeah.
But it just feels like I'm just right there. And like things just some little nudge at some point, and I'm going to go over and it'll it'll just really hit.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's, marketing is one of the probably the toughest elements of being an author, right?
right.
Is like we're here to write stories, not like make Facebook ads, right? And it's
Mhm.
it's so that's partially why I wanted to do these, is because I wanted to talk to sort of independently driven and motivated writers who
Mhm.
are looking for an opportunity to talk about their work, because there probably really isn't much opportunity to do that. Your dedication to an 8-book series, 4 done, that's
Mhm.
a lot of work. And that you should be applauded for that alone, for that that effort and dedication. So amazing.
And it is a lot of work, and going through and gratefully I do have a marketing background, so that's been helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
But things like this are huge. There was a radio station in the UK that did little 5-minute interviews. I did
Mhm.
6 of them. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, people have sent me photos of themselves holding my books, and like from Denmark and the UK, and
Mind blowing.
yeah, the
Yeah.
power of the internet is just amazing.
Incredible. Yeah.
And I've had reviews in India.
Love it. Love it. Well,
Who knew?
yeah, I know. I'm constantly blown away by the people from around the globe that contact me because they've seen videos I've made and stuff. It's incredible.
Hmm.
So here's a fun one. Because and then we'll sort of wrap after this. And we'll make sure you get to do a full plug, for sure.
Hmm.
I want people to know where to find the book. Um, okay. All right. So since we talked about not having writer's block, I'm going to put you on the spot. Um, there's a chicken, and the chicken is attacking an elderly person. Why is the chicken doing that?
Why is the chicken attacking the elderly person? Well, I'd actually ask some questions about that, the environment, and does the chicken have food? Does it have, is it starving? Is it, that
No, this
there's
is this
more of
is
this
great.
story. Is it,
Yeah.
it's a post-apocalyptic chicken that, you know, exposed to radiation, and now it's turning green under its feathers. Uh,
I'll accept all of these. I'll see what I think is nice about this, and is that you're asking questions, but your questions are also potential answers,
mhm.
right? And it shows that it's like you're trying to solve that problem so that the characters can, as we were saying, tell you what they're doing. Do you here this is not on my scripted list of questions, but we're really tight on time, but I'm gonna throw an extra one in, a serious one. Do you outline or create backstories for your characters?
Well, it in this series with Nathar, I had an idea for a character while I was in college, that I was fascinated by Socrates,
Hmm.
and Socrates would go into a trance-like state, and he called it being seized by the demon of philosophy, and he would
Mm-hmm.
come out of this with some big epiphany. So I wanted to have a character sometime that was like that, that would go into a trance-like state. And
Mhm.
so Nathar, sometimes when he is seized by the demon of sight, then it is so powerful that he is frozen in place. And so that's where that came from, is that idea
Mm.
for a character. So I basically had three things. I had that idea for a character, and then I had the dream, and then all my maps, I always drew my maps by hand. But as an experiment, I had drawn a map in on my computer to see if it would work. It was an experiment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then in the end, I was kind of happy with it. So I had a map, I had a character, and I had a dream.
I love
And
it.
all those three turned into this 8 book series.
It's incredible.
And
So, so just very quickly, in 2 minutes or less, um, tell everyone once again the names of all the books and where they can find them, where they can purchase these, and maybe give a plug for your website or best way to sort of follow you on
okay.
social.
So the series is called The New Blood Saga, and Crown Prince is book one, and it has won some awards, which you can see there. Order of Light is book two, and again, it's also won some awards. Demon Seed is book three, and it has won one award. It just, which is why it's not on the cover, is that it's
Mhm.
fairly recent. And then I have a fourth book that is a sci-fi novella called Paleface that got honorable mention in L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future. And so
And that's
all of
that's an
these,
unrelated book from the
that's
series,
not
correct?
related to those.
Yeah.
This one is sci-fi.
Got it. Yeah.
And so where you can find them is at kilpack.net. That's K-I-L, one L, KILPACK.net. And, or you can find them on Amazon or Barnes and Noble for the Nook. But the easiest thing is if you go to kilpack.net, that's kind of the communication hub for my dreams.
Perfect. Perfect. And I'll put links and stuff in the video description. So if anyone's trying to just easily get to stuff, check the video description so that you can jump right there. All right. Well, WD Kilpack III goes by Bill. Thank you so much for doing this. I hope it was fun and easy and a good opportunity to sort of talk craft a bit. And I encourage everyone to check out your work and to read it and to buy it and get some money in your holiday Christmas stocking, perhaps.
That would be nice.
Yes, or your Star Wars Life Day, right? I think that's there we go.
Yeah.
All right, well, perfect. Um, thank you very much, and I'm gonna wave bye.